Brian Ferentz will not return as Iowa's OC in 2024. 24/7 Sports first reported this news on Sunday, and the program later confirmed it. Iowa's offense has been among the worst in the nation for the past 3 seasons. This year, ranking 118th nationally in scoring with just over 19 points a game, and dead last nationally in offensive yardage with 232 yards a game. Our David Eickholt of Hawkeye Insider has been all over this news from the jump, and he joins us now with more. David, there's a reason the move was made now instead of after the season. What kind of impact on recruiting does this decision have?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, too, because you think about this 2024 recruiting class. It's been going on since 2021. Iowa got their first commit, but it's also been set in stone since July 19th of this summer. So I think it's a good thing. I think Brian Ferentz really has not been too involved in the recruiting aspect over the past couple of years. But I do think that the timing had to happen now. Yes, Iowa is still in contention to win the Big Ten West despite the offensive numbers that you already mentioned. But you also just look ahead and you look at the way the transfer portal era is kind of changing things. December 4th, the portal opens up, and with the offense being as bad as it has been, not just this year, but over the past 3 years, Iowa has to really get out ahead of the curve, and they have to try to make themselves at least a little bit appealing to some potential prospects, because no amount of NIL money is going to help land you some instant impact. Now, I know it was up in the air for a couple of commits after Brian Ferentz was fired, but again, finishing out the season. But I do think right now Iowa's in a good spot, and quite honestly, I really think this is going to help Iowa's recruiting going forward.
It's really important. You're obviously selling the future, and if that future looks a bit cloudy, it's a little bit difficult to sell it. And right now in 2024, David, I think Iowa is doing a decent job, right? They're pacing for a top 30 class. They have 6 4-star commitments among their 20 commits. What's the outlook for the next 2 months ahead of the early signing period as Iowa aims to keep this group together, especially on the offensive side of the ball?
Yeah, obviously you already mentioned, I think the defense is in a really good spot, but the 2 names that I really want to keep an eye on that are already committed in the class is 4-star quarterback James Razar. This is a guy who's known more of an athlete, and I think Iowa really needs that from the quarterback position. I think, he is more detailed and oriented as an athlete, but I think the quarterback traits can come with it. Has a verified 4.67 track time, and Iowa needs an athlete. They need a guy that can get out in space and move in the pocket, because look who's coming in the Big Ten: USC, UCLA, Washington, Oregon. Those are some really exciting offenses. And Razar's commitment, I think, was a little bit uncertain. Hawkeye insider Sean Bach asked Razar about his stats after Brian Ferentz was fired. He had no comment at the time. But after a good talk with Kirk Ferentz, shortly after that, he said, you know what? I'm back all in on Iowa, but I do know some other schools are going to continue to kind of keep track of him. And another guy that I really think is going to continue to rise up the 24/7 sports rankings, it's going to be 4-star tight end Gavin Hoffman. I think he's one of the best athletes among the tight ends in this 2024 class. And you kind of look at some of the past Iowa tight ends and what they've been able to do with some of the athletic guys. Think about Noah Fant. Think about TJ Hawkins and even Sam Laporta, who I think fell a little bit more under the radar. But Hoffman's going to continue getting some big calls, and I think some schools are going to come after him. But Iowa holding on to Abdul Hodge as a tight end coach, Iowa's reputation of being tight end I think Iowa is going to be able to hold on to him, but the big dogs are not going to back off anytime soon.
So, David, Iowa's 2024 class currently has 20 commits, but they haven't had a commitment since late July. So already not a lot of momentum there. Are there any lingering targets they're still looking to add?
Yeah, I like to call it a Phil Parker specialty, Grace. I mean, you look at some of the past guys that Phil Parker's, kind of pulled out in the late signing period or in the past couple weeks. I mean, you think about guys like Desmond King, the Jim Thorpe Award winner, Josh Jackson, who was another big-time standout, Brendan Diaz-Fernandez a couple classes ago, Geno Stone, who just secured a huge deal in the NFL, leads the NFL in interceptions. Phil Parker, I think, is one of the more underrated secondary coaches in the country. I think the best defensive coordinator in the country. And the fact he hasn't won the coordinator of the year is a little bit surprising to me. So Iowa really is not tracking too many targets right now. And I think they're going to be really careful about trying to target too many guys, because you think about the potential portal attrition. As I've already mentioned, the Iowa offense, it's a really tough sell right now. And not even just selling to potential future additions. you're talking about keeping some talented players on the roster because, don't let the stats fool you. I've been a full believer that Iowa still has some really good pieces on offense, but you kind of look at where they've been over the past couple of years. I think you're going to almost have to kind of repitch to your current players that they are going to be put in a position to succeed. So no specific names right now. Iowa's still sort of tracking, but it's going to be really interesting to see what Phil Parker and the rest of the staff kind of pull together.
David, you mentioned two very key words there, transfer portal. And I think the move at the coaching position, obviously with a new offensive coordinator, I think will impact things for the Iowa Hawkeyes. How do you think this change might affect how Iowa approaches the transfer portal?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, too, because I thought Iowa got an A from me based on how they did the last transfer portal cycle. They got the quarterback they wanted in Cade McNamara. He just couldn't stay healthy. Eric All is still the team's leading receiver, by the way, despite being out for the past couple of weeks. Nick Jackson, what he's been able to do at the linebacker position. And that was really the first year where Kirk Ferentz sort of embraced the transfer portal. Despite the injuries, Kirk Ferentz values culture and kind of accountability and leadership. And you look at some of the guys they brought in. As I mentioned, Cade McNamara was on campus in June. He was voted team captain. Eric All is going to be an NFL tight end. He's been incredibly highly thought of in the locker room. Nick Jackson's continued to get better and better. So I think Kirk Ferentz is going to be a little bit more aggressive with some of the guys in the portal because of the leadership and because they've been able to identify guys that fit well within their program. But I'd also point out to people this. You can flip an offense in 1 year in the modern day transfer portal. But the big question I have for Kirk Ferentz is, will he keep his hands off the offense? And will Iowa shell out, $1.5 million or so to get an offensive coordinator to kind of flip the offense? And a name that I think is a dream hire, but I do think that Iowa could have a little bit of traction with if given the right opportunity. It's going to be Washington offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb. He's a guy from Kingsley, Iowa, played college football at Buena Vista and Storm Lake, Iowa. Not necessarily Hawkeye ties, but Iowans are pretty true to Iowan values, and what he's been able to do at Washington, it's been impressive. So if Iowa gets a home run hire out of the from the coaching cycle, I really do think that they'll be able to at least make Iowa some sort of appealing for offensive impact players, because right now it does seem like it's putting lipstick on a pig, right? I mean, the offense has been so bad for the past 3 years, but there's a lot of pressure on Kirk Ferentz and on Iowa to flip this offense, and I'll tell you, I think this is going to be the most important hire in the Kirk Ferentz tenure.
You know what, guys, I'm not going to lie. I'm going to miss the drive to 325. It was fun while it lasted. It'll be interesting to see which direction this program goes. All right, thanks, David. And for more of his work, be sure to head over to HawkeyeInsider.com. You'll be the first to know about any of the coaching rumors, plus portal and recruiting news. Again, that's HawkeyeInsider.com.